Hello people from YouTube, I am Pi. Today I'm joined by my friend Max, TwinlessTwin, and we are doing quite a new content for our channel. It's a tier list of what we think it's good or it's not very good in this current format. I think it's important to make a tier list because we got huge unbans and a lot of good and important tournaments are coming in this January, so we are here to kind of clear our mind and express our thoughts about the best decks in the format. Here we have a bit like a huge chunk of decks, so let's see which one is tier 1 and which one is tier 3.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. I think, like you said, there are big tournaments coming up, and it's very important to understand which decks you think will both be the most popular and best performing decks, because Modern, I think, is unparalleled in how important the sideboard is. And building your sideboard correctly and hitting those matchups that you prepare for can make a huge difference. So, especially for people playing tempo decks like we like to play, you have extra cantrips. You can really find your sideboard cards consistently, but you want to have the right ones. So I think that this tier list will be both a fun exercise, but also a very helpful one in tournament prep.
Okay, so let's go. I think I will start with Belcher, just because I played a bit of Belcher and I have some ideas regarding the deck. So I think Belcher was definitely tier 1 before the ban list, but nowadays I would put it in tier 1.5 because a lot of deck changed, and I think Belcher kind of struggles versus the deck with a lot of 1-drops, because the best interaction the deck has are for 2-drops in terms of snare, shoal, etc. So I think
Sure.
a lot of discard spells are now in modern. Even we play discard in Oculus. So I'm not sure the deck is as good as it was before. But of course, you are playing a one card combo. So I think I would put this in 1.5.
Yeah, I like that placement. I think that you hit on a lot of good points. The meta has definitely changed. Even before the bans, we saw, Energy start to play black for discard spells and Stony Silence sideboard. I think that, funny enough, with Mox Opal being unbanned, we might see more artifact hate that can be relevant for Belcher. And the meta has also gotten a bit lower curve with Faithless Lootings unbanned, and discard spells are more prevalent, which is more difficult for Belcher to deal with than counter spells generally. So all those reasons, I think it's a good point. I think the next one we can probably get out of the way is Energy, actually, because they banned Amped Raptor and the One Ring, but I think based on recent tournament results, Energy is pretty undisputably tier 1 and is still going to be a popular deck at your next tournament. What do you think, Pi?
Yeah, I think if we base the tiers on popularity, I expect a lot of energy. I think the deck is kinda built by itself because you just remove the banned cards and add something else, and the deck is easily ready to win a tournament. I think the deck is still at level 1 in terms of tournament preparation because it's not broken. You're just playing an aggro deck now. So of course it's solid, consistent, but I'm not sure it will be so good in terms of winnings in future tournaments. But of course I expect a lot of energy, also because people have the cards already. So yeah, I would put still in the tier 1, but I don't think it's a broken deck. I just think it's a very popular and solid deck.
Agreed. Yeah, and I've explained this a lot, but I think like with the One Ring, the problem is it's very difficult to play sweepers as an answer to energy, because if you draw a sweeper and then they play the One Ring, you're going to lose, right? So now that they lose the One Ring, they become a little bit more one-dimensional. They're much more of like a creature aggro deck. And something like Pyroclasm is very effective against them. It can often, be a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1. And then you can prepare your deck more for that creature centric element. And so the deck is much more beatable now.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, the next one I think it's Eldrazi. So I don't really trust the Eldrazi decks. I think there is a deck that is popping up that is playing Yggdrasil and it's sort of like plays a Breach version with Emrakuls. But the loss the deck took from the ban of the One Ring is of course huge, as I think the Eldrazi was always a bit of a slow deck, a slow and a controlish deck, and without the boost of Ring, the tempo boost, and also the card advantage engine, the deck is not as powerful as it was. I think there are probably decks that ways in which the deck can be built, but for now I think I would put it in the tier 2, so it's still a deck that people play and might be strong, but you really can't compete with what's on top at the moment.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I still, as a blue player, I'm not going to be cutting consigned to memory entirely from my sideboard. But you're right that they lost the One Ring, which is pretty much irreplaceable. And I think also the meta is becoming a bit more like combo linear centric, which I expect the Eldrazi deck to have more trouble with. Previously, I think it part of the reason people played it is because they felt like they had a pretty strong energy matchup. But now it's I think the meta is taking a turn that kind of doesn't favor Eldrazi.
Yeah, exactly. Then I think we can discuss briefly about Breach. I think it's a deck a lot of people think it's broken. A lot of people think it's like the best deck in the format. Personally, I tried the deck and I haven't been particularly impressed. I think the deck is very good, but I'm not sure it's very solid considering it struggles versus a lot of the hate that is at the moment. So you are slower versus Graveyard 8, you are slower versus Artifact 8, and so on. And I think the deck doesn't really have a B plan nowadays, because you need to, of course, make some construct with Saga, you need to draw cards with Tamio, but none of this plan can win the game consistently. So I think I will put it in the tier 1.5 until maybe someone breaks the deck. But what do you think? Maybe still tier 1. I think the deck can win on turn 2 sometimes. So
Yeah, this deck, I mean, it seems busted, but I agree. It's people still need to figure out the best way to build it. I mean, there's 8 Moxen, there's Urza's Saga, it has fast combo kills, while still somehow being able to play like a decent amount of interaction in the deck. Um, so I think 1.5 is fine. It could definitely be tier 1. Um, I think that people need some time to plan it out. So if we want to say looking forward to the future, in a couple weeks, I would not be surprised if this deck was tier 1.
yeah, I agree. The next one, I think it's Broadscale, and I think Broadscale is actually busted. Like, it's very, very strong combo decks, very resilient, and can play both grindy games with the 3-mana Eldrazi that creates a...
Flash Raker.
Yeah, exactly, Flash Raker. But also can win on turn 3 out of nowhere, like turn 1 Blade, turn 2 Broadscale, and then you're dead. So I think the deck
That's not exactly out of nowhere.
yeah, but you know, they play an odd artifact for 1 mana, then they play a good card in Pauper, and then you're dead. Like, it's fun.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
So
It can win quickly. Yes.
Yeah, but it's also very consistent because your combo is mostly uncounterable, because you can get the sword out of Urza Saga, you play Cavern of Souls naming Eldrazi, and then you play a lot of ways to search for your combo. You play Rumble and Steerings, and then you play Kozilek's Command on top of something else. I see a version with Karn, I see a version with Thugnatsir, with Sowing Myco Spawn. So I think people are still figuring out the best way to combo, but the deck felt really strong. So I would put this on the tier 1s. What do you think?
Okay, I mean, I'm a little surprised by that. I did play Broadscale a bit with the One Ring, and it was a different format, but it felt like you were the best or one of the best One Ring decks because you could find it so consistently. So you were able to produce the most One Rings out of anyone playing the One Ring. And so I was like, that is the selling point to me on this deck. And obviously, having the quick combo is relevant to some extent, but it just depends how interactive the format is. I guess if the format becomes more linear, then maybe the One Ring becomes less important. And with the unbanning of Opal and Faithless Looting, that is encouraging less interactive, more linear gameplay, certainly. So maybe that actually makes it okay. I just wasn't sure if Karn would really be a valid replacement for the ring, but it does a lot of strong things. And as a blue player, I mean, we're all very jealous of the power of the cantrips, Ancient Stirrings, and Malevolent Rumble that green somehow gets. So I believe you that this deck could be tier one.
Yeah. So now it's time to talk about Phoenix. I think the core of the deck is actually powerful because you got to play with looting. Looting with no downside is very strong. Basically, draw 2 cards for 1 mana. But I think unless you kind of break the deck, and I haven't seen any deck that is ready now to be broken. I don't think the deck is particularly powerful. I think I take this as a challenge personally to try to break Phoenix, but nowadays I would put it in the tier 2. What do you think?
Yeah, I think tier two or even tier three right now is okay. You and I have been talking a lot about Phoenix, and I think we have some ideas that could get it up to tier two or maybe even tier 1.5. So there's definitely the potential there. The deck does very strong things consistently, but it is pretty susceptible to graveyard hate still, and that's a bit of a knock against it for figuring out, your post board plans. So yeah, there's just a lot of room for exploration. There's Buried Alive. There's like some people are playing Demi Lich. I think Deep Analysis might slot well into the deck. Lots of things to talk about for how to build this deck. Artist Talent is a card that has made Phoenix dominant in Pioneer. Can it move over? So just lots and lots of things to work through with Phoenix, and it's going to take some time, but don't worry. If you are a Phoenix fan, Pi and I are on the case, and we'll try to get it out of tier three soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we can talk about Storm. I think Storm is similarly to Belcher. So I just think Storm and Belcher are like the two sides of a coin because Storm is faster and has more goldfish, but it's less interactive. So
Yep.
I think you kind of struggle versus the cards that dominate the format in terms of graveyard date, and sometimes you just don't get to do what you need to do. But I think it's a deck that if no one is caring about what you do, it's very strong and has a historically good matchup versus energy, while capable to race any of the other combo decks. So I think this deck kind of struggles versus interaction at the moment, but apart from that, the deck is powerful. So I would put it in the tier 1.5.
Yeah, that sounds good. Um, and I actually think we could, well, let's talk about Splinter Twin, and then we can use this opportunity to talk about what we've been working on. Um, okay, so Splinter Twin, there's a lot of questions. Is it still playable in 2024? Is it still going to dominate like it did back in 2015? I think Splinter Twin was a safe unban, and I think that the deck is not broken. However, I think the deck is very strong, and I think that there are a lot of ways to build it. And that there is still certainly something very potent about a deck that can interact, but also has an instant speed combo that is, somewhat unpredictable and hard to play against. So for as long as the deck is not the number one deck to beat, I'm not sure that like the lists that I'm building, I'm not sure they can beat dedicated hate cards like, Rending Volley, for example, would be very difficult for me to beat. But if it's not in the spotlight, I think that this deck can definitely be tier 2, tier 1.5, and I've been winning quite a bit with it still. Um, I think that we still need to continue to explore the builds. I've found some promise in like playing a mixed fair deck where you have like DRC maybe with iteration and some of like a Murktide shell slotting in Twin, but also there's been some success playing like a Wizards build. So we're gonna be challenging you guys to break Splinter Twin and win the Modern Challenge with it. And make sure you check out my Twitter and PieGonti's Twitter for when we announce that challenge. I am excited about Splinter Twin, obviously, as Twinless Twin. And I do think this deck is super competitive and could win a tournament, especially when it's not being targeted like some of the other top decks. What do you think, Pie?
Yeah, I agree. I think we talked a lot about ways to build a deck, and I think the concept is still a bit unexplored. But yeah, I think we are on the right path in terms of deck building. And well, you are just releasing a new article about the deck. So if someone is listening is curious to see, you can just join the MetaFi page where the article is ready, where there are actually 5 ways to build a deck, but also probably there are even more ways, and we are trying to gather all the iteration of the deck, and I'm very excited. So I think for now I'll put it in the tier 2, since
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think
And since you mentioned, or
yes.
since you mentioned the MetaFi, maybe now's a good time to tell people this week and this week only. We partnered with MetaFi and we're offering 30% off for new subscribers. So if you're interested in joining in preparation for the upcoming RC, or just to get your bearings straight with this new meta, you can use code DELVE30, that's DELVE 30, to delve 30% of the price away and save there. So hopefully that's a nice,
I will show you this.
opportunity. We made a very, very good infographic. And so yeah, code DELVE30 gets you 30% off. We're excited to see people join the Discord and get in on the discussion for all of these really cool, blue decks that we've been working on.
Yeah. So the next one is Omnath. I think a lot. I saw people playing the deck. Someone even topated the challenge. So I think the deck is playable. I don't think it can match the power of the actually strong deck, especially because this deck always struggle to beat combo decks. So I think I would put it in the tier
Yeah,
2.
this feels like one where it's, if the meta was 40% energy, maybe this deck would have a chance now, but it's a lot of combo decks, and I have never really felt like Omnath is good against combo. I agree with you.
Now it's time to talk about Affinity. So I used to be an Affinity player like when I was 17. So I started my competitive path into Affinity, into modern Affinity, and when Mox Opal was unbanned, is one of the first deck I tried, and the deck was bad first because you can't really beat any of the combo decks, and you are not as solid as Energy. And on top of that, nowadays people play Meltdown, people play Collect Roof, Stony Silence, so you get a lot of random hate that destroys all your permanents, or even doesn't let your land tap for mana. So I think is sadly a tier 3. I'm curious if they can make a splash into the competitive modern nowadays, but for now I'm not seeing that. And I think like I saw very different builds of Affinity. Some with 0 drop and 1 drop, some with like 7 drops, etc. And I don't think any of those is barely competitive or similar to the decks we put in the first row.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Talking about Titan instead, I think Titan is very, very strong. So I would put this on tier 1. I think nowadays it's even more complicated to play Titan because the loop you get to do with the lands, etc., makes it quite tough to play. But I think if you're good at sequencing and playing this kind of deck, it's a very cool moment to do Titan stuff, because the meta seems combo centric, and of course Energy still plays Blood Moon, and there are a couple of cards you need to figure out how to beat, but I would put this into the tier 1 because like each time I play against Titan, it's either Harbinger of the Sea or I struggle. So
Yeah, no, it's fair. And I think Green Sun Zenith, it'll be interesting to see if that card actually makes it into Titan or not. It seems like it could be a nice flexible card for them to add, but even without Green Suns, the deck is always doing strong things, and generally it just is kind of its position depends on how much hate there is for it, and so that'll be the interesting thing to see.
yeah. So now it's time to talk about creativity. I don't think the deck is good. I think the deck is just fine. Sometimes what you do is good, but in general the deck is very clunky. None of your plan is actually very good, and a lot of cards you play are like Pioneer level. Like you play Fable of the Mirror Breaker as your turn 3, with people usually kill you. And even your combo is like you spend 4 mana to target your dwarf, they have Fatal Push, or they just combo you out, and like analyze the tier 1s. This deck plays a lot of interaction. This other deck doesn't care about an Archon of Cruelty being put into play. So even those, but I think even those like. So I just don't think this deck is very good. It's probably a deck people like to play, and that's why the deck still is doing some results. But I don't know. I would put it in the tier 2, but I expect it to be a tier 3 in terms of results for any competitive event.
Yeah. I think tier two is fair. The deck, I mean, you've pointed out a lot of weaknesses of the deck, but I also think it does have strengths. I mean, it gets to play a very consistent game with looting and Fable, and it gets to have some disruption with Thoughtseize and Fatal Push, and then can have as quick as a turn 2 Archon Reanimate, which a lot of decks just can't beat. Some decks can, so that's the downside, right? But yeah, overall, I don't know how strong this deck will be long term. It
Yeah,
has definitely a lot of weaknesses, but I think that it's not a joke either. And funny enough, I mean, I think that it's the graveyard hate from Faithless Looting's Unbanned definitely hurts it, but in an unprepared, if people are a little less prepared, then it could be pretty good.
yeah. And you know what? I think I would put still this in tier 2. I think it's a deck that people are still still figuring out. Like as Twin, of course, in Yag Moth you can play Zenith, and there are different ways you can build the deck. But I think for how the meta is perceived by me, I don't think the deck is particularly strong. I'm still open to see a very good Yag Moth list that is doing constant results. But for how the format it is right now, I don't think I can see that. And like the biggest thing is you play a Zenith deck, but you can't Zenith for Yag Moth. And then if you
Yeah.
play Zenith, you don't really want to play Chord of Calling because there is a bit of like you don't want to play many tutors, you want to play creatures. So I think someone will figure it out, but for now, I don't think it's very good.
I think this deck is tier 3, honestly, right now. Yeah, I think that Zenith doesn't really add much to the deck, to be honest. And the meta is also just like contextually not looking great for Yag Moth because there's a lot of combo decks that I think Yag Moth can have some trouble with. It's a little bit slower. And there's not a lot of creature decks, which is, Yag Moth's best matchups tend to be the matchups where putting Yawgmoth into play as a one card combo as you just machine gun their board, and there's not a lot of that going on either. So I mean, maybe if Yawgmoth somehow has a strong energy matchup, which I'm not even sure it does, then that could be an opportunity for Yawgmoth to have a spot in the meta. But yeah, I'm not convinced on this one.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't know, like you still play a lot of good cards, and the green has a lot of tools, so you're still playing a toolbox deck, so you can, for example,
Yeah, that's
tutor
true.
endurance, tutor collector roof, stuff like that.
I
So
think Yeah, that is strong. I think ultimately there's going to be a better Green Sun Zenith deck that can fill the place. I mean, maybe there's like Devoted Druid or something else out there that can utilize Green Sun Zenith better for the actual combo. If Green Sun could find Yawgmoth, I would be saying a very different story right now.
yeah, of
But
course.
when it's just finding grist or a ramp or a hate piece, I think it's a lot less effective because it can't be used as proactively. So that's kind of my take on that. But hey, maybe I underestimate Green Suns. It is a strong card, and maybe it's still good enough in Yawgmoth.
Yeah. So I decidedly put the blue black or Grixis Oculus last because I think I wanted to figure out how the meta was looking. I think the deck is a tier 1.5 with the possibility of being a tier 1 just because, of course, you're playing counter spells, so you need to build your deck trying to beat the expected meta, meaning that I think a blue black deck. Played by a good player with a tuned sideboard can beat everything. And I think the deck that the things that the deck does in terms of cheating Oculus into play, playing Psychic Frog, playing counter spells and removals are quite strong considering the combo meta. And a lot of decks like are Pitch Black versus Psychic Frog. So I think the deck is a tier 1.5 for now, and like of course my goal personally is to metagamize each weekend for my RC and for the competitive tournament to put it in the tier 1 and one of the most feared to have it as one of the most feared deck in Modern.
I think that this deck could easily be tier 1 now. I mean, it just Psychic Frog is pretty clearly one of, if not the most powerful single cards in Modern right now. The question is, how do you build the best deck around it to support the Psychic Frog card? And I think with how linear and combo heavy this tier list is, it's a good time to be playing Thoughtseize and counter spells. And so I would not be surprised if, this deck was solidly tier 1. I think there are still some things to figure out about balancing both your proactive cards with your reactive cards and all of those things. Tamio seems like a strong combo with looting, but I'm still not 100% sold. Just some questions like that figuring those things out, and once the meta settles a little bit more so you can build a good list and sideboard, this deck I think is going to be tier 1. It's just very, very powerful, and I think whether you stay blue black or add red for looting and some other cards, it's it's very strong and potentially the best fair deck.
Yeah, okay, so of course I agree, and I already topated the challenge with the Grixis version, but I see a lot of people doing results with the stock blue black. So yeah, you have all the tools, you have Harbinger, Graveyard 8, Thoxys, counterspells. So yeah, I'm really happy by how the deck is positioned. I kind of expected it because I think the One Ring ban was kind of clear, but well, I think the deck can really be a contender in this new meta. Okay, so this was everything for today. I hope you enjoyed your tier list, and if you disagree or you want to put any other deck on the map, make sure to write a comment, and in the end of the video I will put again the screen where you can see the code for joining the MetaFi. So MetaFi basically works as Patreon. So it's the best way to support our project and to join the best tempo community in the world. Of course, we have a very big Discord with a lot of decks, a lot of channels, and a lot of people that are discussing every day. And I think this is the best way to progress the decks we love.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope to see you guys all there. We're excited to be joining MetaFi, and it's gonna unlock some good opportunities in the future to do new cool stuff that we couldn't do with Patreon. And also we're able to offer this awesome discount to you guys to try it out. So thank you guys so much for watching. And we will see you in another video.
Bye.